Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair everyone for taking the time out to come. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He rewards every small action. And our sitting in the masjid, even if it's for a sa'ah or one moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is recording that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be rewarding that. Inshallah, today we'll keep it short and sweet. Our discussion for today is on Tawakkul. So, like we've done in the past, when we hear the term Tawakkul, what comes to mind? Our young brother? What comes to the mind when you hear the word Tawakkul? Everything? It's not a wrong answer. You're coming back? Okay. Anyone? Tawakkul? Yes, brother?
Putting your full trust in Allah.
Putting your full trust in Allah. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. So, has anyone heard the term wakil? What does wakil mean?
Person that you assign in charge.
Okay, but
Like a close friend.
okay, I'm looking for a different term. Lawyer. One of the terms for lawyer is wakil. In different languages, like in Urdu or in Bangla, I think even in Arabic, sometimes usually lawyer is muhami, but they also use the term wakil. And it comes from the same root letters, waw, kaf, and dam. So to understand tawakkul, let us look at wakil, or a lawyer. You see, when we get into a problem, may Allah protect us, and we're afraid of the police or the courts or litigation or something of that sort, what do? We get someone who knows the law inside out. And we know that this person is going to act in our best interests. This person has a lot of experience. This person, we place our full, and this is again where the trust term is coming. We place our full trust in this person's hands. My life is in your hands. Because we know that if the wakil, he slips up even by a little bit, then, subhanallah, a person will go to jail. Or a person's prison sentence will become even longer. So a person is literally placing their life into that person's hands. So this is essentially what tawakkul is. That you and I, when we say, oh, I'm doing tawakkul, I'm placing my trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this should be even more than the amount of trust and confidence that we have in our lawyers. Subhanallah, you speak with a brother who's going through some issues, and if he has a lawyer, he says, don't worry, I got a lawyer, it's taken care of. I don't even lose sleep over it. He's doing his job, I know I'll be good in the end. The same way you and I, we have to understand that if I am placing my trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it should be, then I should be even more secure and confident and stable than the person who is putting their trust in the lawyer. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, beautiful ayah, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. The one who trusts in Allah, فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ, then Allah is enough for him. You see, the lawyer, subhanAllah, there are situations when a lawyer will need a lawyer. How so? Let's say a lawyer has done some form of malpractice. Let's say he, twisted some laws, or he did some shady stuff in order to get a case, taken care of. Now his law firm is facing litigation. There's a lawsuit against the law firm. So they have other lawyers to represent them. So the point that I'm trying to make is that this person that we're placing so much trust in, this lawyer, this person in himself or herself is in need. And this is why the true wakil, the true protector, the true representative is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never needs anyone's backup. This lawyer that we place our trust in, this person tomorrow he may get disbarred. Meaning he's kicked out of the lawyer's organization. He can't practice law anymore. Guess what? He can't defend you. He says, oh, I left practicing law 10 years ago. I retired. Does Allah retire? No, He doesn't retire. There's no organization that says Allah is capable of protecting now and for the next 20 years He has His license and then after that no more. He has to renew it. No. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the true protector. So this is what we need to understand. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, very beautiful hadith, he says, لو أنكم تتوكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو خماصا وتروح بطانا. Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is giving us an admonition. He's saying that if you were to trust in Allah the way that He ought to be trusted in, then Allah would have given you rizq, Allah would have given you sustenance and provision, just like how He provides for the birds. The birds in the trees, Prophet ﷺ says, in the morning they wake up, their stomachs are empty, bellies, burning for food. And at nighttime they come back, they're taruhu bitanan, they return home, and their bellies are full. Not only that, but they have a worm in the mouth for their kids. Does the bird have a degree? Does the bird work a 9 to 5? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written this for this bird and for every single creation of His. Now, does this mean that a person leaves his job, doesn't get an education? No, absolutely not. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam taught us to take advantage of the asbab, meaning to use the material means, but we do not let the material means govern our brains. A very interesting story comes to mind. Sulaiman alayhi salam, we've all heard of him, wonderful, great prophet of Allah Azza wa Jal. And he was, not only was he a prophet, but he was a king. He had control over the birds, the clouds, the jinn, you name it, he had control and sovereignty over that. وَهَبْنِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. This is the dua of Sulaiman alayhi salam. O Allah, gift me such a sovereignty, such a kingdom, such a control that you're never going to give to anyone else. So Sulaiman alayhi salam, you and I, we get happy if there's, if we're driving a Mercedes or a limo or some Bugatti. You know what Sulaiman alayhi salam's car was? The clouds. The clouds. As fast, the clouds would take him wherever he would want to go. So Sulaiman alayhi salam one day, and it comes in a narration, and this is just to give an example of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how He provides for His creation. Why? Because all creation aside from human beings and jinn, they trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is only us two creations that were flimsy. Oh, maybe, I could, Everyone else, they're fully happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree. So, one day Sulaiman alayhi salam, this is the gist of the story, he says, Ya Allah, I want to feed all of your creation. I want to feed all of your creation. You've given me such kingdom, and I want to thank you. I want to be the host to all of your creation. All the animals, all of your, anyone who wants food, I'm going to prepare food for them and I'm going to give it. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, yes, okay, fine, cook. So He cooks for an entire month, and it's not just him sitting there cutting potatoes. No, He has all of His servants, jinnat, different creations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from. All of these, creations that are under His control, they contributed to creating this huge feast. And at the end, He's thinking, after 1 month of cooking, we can imagine how much, thousands of pounds of food and different delicacies he's prepared. So he says, "Oh Allah, I'm ready to host your creation." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "You're ready." So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a fish, huge whale. This whale comes and eats the entire thing. 1 full month's preparation of food, catering service, done. 1 gulp, 1 mouthful. The whale says, "I want more." The whale says, I get 3 times this every day from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You said that you wanted to host me. Where's my other 2 bites? I get 3 bites like this. You gave me 1. And this is one creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing, and the moral of this incident is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides beyond our wildest dreams. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to teach Sulaiman alayhi salam that it doesn't matter what kind of king you are and how much power and sovereignty you have and authority. Ana malikul muluk. I am the true king. So you and I, this is going to the next point, that we have to understand when we place our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who we're placing our trust in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in Surah Al-Furqan, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ. Place your trust in the one who is ever living, the one who will never die. Now, you and I, when we get a lawyer, no matter how much we trust that lawyer, no matter how much experience and how many cases this lawyer has won in their past, there is always an understanding that one day this lawyer will pass away, or even before he passes away, the lawyer will retire. He won't practice law anymore. He's not going to defend your case. So this is why some big companies, instead of getting a lawyer, a single lawyer, what they do is they hire an entire firm, the entire lawyer firm. So you have hundreds of lawyers. Why? Because they know one lawyer, you trust one lawyer, anything can happen. Falls sick, passes away, traffic accident, something happens to the lawyer. But a whole company, a lot more stable. However, this same company wasn't there 50 years ago, and in 50 years, who knows where it's going to be. The point that is trying to be made here is that no matter what you and I, we place our trust in, if it is anyone or anything aside from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that thing one day was not there and one day will not be here. There is an end to it. There was a beginning to it and there is going to be an end for it. So therefore, we cannot guarantee support from this individual. Some of us, we consider our friends ride or die. This term, ride or die, oh, he's my day one. He's my ride or die. This person will always take care of me. No matter what happens, I know that this guy's got my back. He will take care of me. He's going to support me. What happens if he doesn't? What happens if he becomes upset with you? And we've heard of this all the time. SubhanAllah, sometimes the closest of friends become the most bitter of enemies. So the person who you're looking to for support, this person, even though he's capable of supporting you, turns his back on you. So in other words, if a person puts their trust and reliance upon anyone aside from Allah, this is illogical, this is foolishness. Now, does this mean that we don't take help from anyone? No. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he used to take help from his Sahaba. Very common example of this would be when Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam would be traveling for military expeditions. Always at night time there would be a sentry, there would be a guard that would stay awake while the rest of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu and Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam are sleeping. Why? So that they can warn the Sahaba in case anything happens. Does this mean that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam didn't trust Allah? No. He trusted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he also followed the command of Allah to use material means as well. But the main the idea here is we don't place our mental trust. The problem is in the brain. We think that if I've done all the dunyawi stuff, the material stuff, I'm taken care of. Subhanallah, how many people have we seen who have very, very prestigious degrees, but subhanallah, they're unable to find a job. Now we know the economic situation, like tens of thousands of people are being laid off on a weekly, monthly basis. These are not dumb people. These are very highly intellectual people. People who are working, 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years in a company. They were very senior titles. But this is not enough. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written something, it will occur. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't written something, it won't occur. As we say, مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ كَانَ. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes will occur. وَمَا لَمْ يَشَأْ لَمْ يَكُنْ. Whatever Allah doesn't wish will not occur. It's as simple as that. So, in summary, and inshallah we'll conclude here, if we look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hijrah journey, when he went from Mecca to Medina, there are many small lessons that we can take, the tawakkul that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had. This being paired with also taking precautions, that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do all the necessary measures, but ultimately his heart's connection was with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will take care of it. If Allah is on my side, everything's taken care of. As Ibn Ata'illah as-Sikandari, as it's reported, rahimahullah, he used to say, إِن وَجَدْتَنِي وَجَدْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. This is a quote from Allah Azza wa Jal. If you have found me, if you have me on your side, you have everything, you've gotten everything. وَإِن فَقَدْتَنِي. If you've lost me, if your connection with me is cut, فَقَدْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. You've lost everything. We see this in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his hijrah journey. Very famous story. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, they're traveling, they're fleeing Mecca, they're going towards Medina, and they decide to hide in a cave called Gharu Thawr. Ghar means cave and Thawr is the name. So the cave of Thawr. So they go inside and it's a very small cave. It's not very deep. Like you can go very deep inside. Someone standing at the mouth of the cave won't be able to. It's very small. So they're standing and they can hear that above them the Quraysh who are chasing them, they're coming. They're walking above them. It's like, when you're in an apartment or in a building and on the floor above you, you can hear people's steps. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, they're standing, they can hear the steps of the Quraysh on their heads. Meaning, just above the cave they're on. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is saying, Ya Rasulullah, if these Quraysh people, if they just look at their feet, if they check to see if their shoelaces are tied, they're going to see us because we're right underneath. So what are you supposed to do here? Ya Rasulullah, I'm afraid. You know what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says? La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana. Don't be worried. Allah is with us. So what do we notice here? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't just stand out in the open. Oh, no one's going to see me, I'm a magician, I'm going to say abracadabra, no, that's not what he did. He found the closest, most appropriate hiding spot, and then he trusted Allah. Oh Allah, I've done my part, I've done whatever is possible for me to do. Oh Allah, you take care of the rest. Oh Allah, I'm not capable of protecting myself if you don't protect me. So we know the outcome. The Quraysh, they look down and they notice two things at the mouth of this cave. They see that there is a spider web on the mouth of this cave. And they use logic, they say that if there's a spider web, then that means that no one has gone inside, because if you go inside, then you would have broken the spider web. And typically, spider web is meant to be a home, and obviously a spider is only going to make its home where it feels safe. So if human beings are coming back and forth and blah blah, this spider web wouldn't have been there. So they say, spider web means no human beings. Prophet and Abu Bakr can't be here. They also notice a bird's nest. So they say that a bird will only build its nest if there's no human contact. And a bird wouldn't be staying here if human beings were coming back and forth. So we know that this place is empty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent these two creations to take care of, subhanAllah, you think about a spider, something you squish like this, and a bird, something that people, in one bite you can eat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used these two small creations to stop huge, big Quraysh, bounty hunters. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala operates. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to protect someone, He doesn't need huge, big tanks or planes or big, huge armies. Throughout the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it. We know Surah Al-Fil, everyone recites it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected Mecca with birds, which had little burning rocks in their talons, and they dropped it, and they destroyed an army of elephants. Elephants, if you get 2 elephants in this room, we won't be able to fit in here. Huge. And little birds destroyed the army. The Arabs were scared. This is the first time they're seeing elephants. When Abraha came with his army, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it. Maybe on another occasion we'll give the full details. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed an army of elephants with birds. So the point being is that if you and I understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and we truly place our trust in Him, haqqa tawakkulihi, as He ought to be trusted in, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fully capable of taking care of us beyond our wildest imaginations. The only job is to, how do I build this tawakkul? How do I become part of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about mutawakkilin in the Quran, the people who place their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do I become from the mutawakkilin? The first thing, ultimately tawakkul is a matter of iman, of strong faith. So we have to work on our iman in order to develop tawakkul. Now you're going to ask this next question, how do I work on my iman? The scholars, they give us some instructions. If we look at in their books, and we see that number one, if we want any quality, whether it's patience, whether it's devotion and concentration and prayer, whatever it is, the first thing is we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Oh Allah, I need tawakkul in my life. Oh Allah, strengthen my belief and my conviction in you. Oh Allah, I don't like the fact that I place more trust and confidence in human beings who are fallible and who make mistakes than I put in you. Oh Allah, I don't like this. I know it's wrong. Oh Allah, fix me. Oh Allah, guide me. We start with that, dua to Allah Azza wa Jalla. The second thing, that we have to talk about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more and more. Unfortunately, you and I, may Allah forgive us, when was the last time I said Allah's name in the last week? Aside from my prayer, when we say Allahu Akbar, aside from that, Allah is bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum. I don't say Allah's name in conversation. It's taboo, hush hush. We don't talk about that religious stuff here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was giving us everything in every single moment, without whom we can't survive for even a second. People, mashallah, we have USA right nearby. I don't know which way I'm pointing. But people, they're studying medicine. They have a school of medicine there. People study for 4 years bachelor's, 4 years of med school, and then 2 to 5, 6 years of residency, and then fellowship and blah, blah, blah. They're 15 years deep into education. They still don't know all the details of the body. But that same body is doing all those things that for us on a daily basis. We don't know nothing about our bodies. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's doing all of this. He's created the system for us. And that Allah we can't talk about, that Allah we can't mention, that Allah we feel ashamed to speak about in front of people. Shouldn't be like that. So, the second thing, talking about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talking about the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This will develop a mental idea that yes, Allah does stuff. Allah takes care of people. Allah does this for me. Allah does that for people. And this will, internally, this will change the filth that is inside our hearts. That today, in our minds, for any problem, we think about anyone and everything aside from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Car problem, mechanic. Police problem, paralegal, lawyer. Marital problems, counselor, therapist. Health problem, doctor. Everyone, we go to everyone aside from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this doesn't say that we shouldn't go to professionals for these matters. But our first thoughts should be, oh Allah, I'm in a difficult situation, I'm in a problem. Oh Allah, I know that it can't be solved without your involvement, without your full support. Oh Allah, you take care of it for me. And then we go, we seek the asbab, the material means. But our hearts need to be connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the creation. This is what tawakkul is. The same way that a person, you go to someone and let's say they have their favorite lawyer, as soon as something happens, they don't care about anyone else. They go straight to that lawyer. Hey, I got a problem. And he knows that as soon as I call him, this lawyer will take care of it. I can breathe easier after I've called this person. The believer, the way that the believer operates, as soon as I talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as soon as I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for support, it's taken care of, it's done. We're good to go, green light. The third thing is that we have to be very careful about how we make our du'as. And this is touching on a topic that we discussed a few weeks back. That when we make dua, there's a certain mindset that we should have. Unfortunately, you and I, we don't have much trust in our du'as. Or I'll make dua because it's the sunnah of the Prophet. I'll make dua because everyone else is raising their hands in Salatul Witr. Let me also raise my hands. No, dua is my lifeline. It's my just the way that if a person is drowning and you throw that the circle, the flotation device how he clings onto it. He doesn't want to let it go. He knows that this is the only thing for life. The same way the believer clings to dua. Similarly, our mindset and our approach to dua should be like that. So to summarize, the way to develop more tawakkul in our lives, it depends on iman, strength of iman. How do we build this? We mentioned three things. Number one, dua. Number two, talking more about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number three, fixing our mentality when it comes to dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us those who truly place our reliance and trust in Him, and to make us those who turn to Him in all affairs. Are there any questions?
You said tawakkul, right? So you cannot have somebody, for instance, stay at the masjid around the clock and they say, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide.
Yes, so our brother is asking the question that if a person is saying that I have tawakkul and I'm going to stay in the masjid, I'm not going to work, I'm not going to provide for my family, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send Uber Eats for free to my house. This is not what tawakkul is. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, very good question. One time, a sahabi, a very poor sahabi, he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm very poor, give me some zakat. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam doesn't just give him zakat, here, take some zakat money, go home. No. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asks him, what do you have at home? What possessions do you have at home? So he says that I have a blanket at home. That's all I have. No pots, no dishes. I just have a blanket at home. You can think of the level of poverty. Ya Rasulullah, I just have this blanket at home. So Prophet ﷺ says, bring that blanket. He says, he takes this blanket and he sells it. This Sahabi is thinking, I only had one blanket. I came to you for something you sold that off too. What am I supposed to do with that? Rasulullah ﷺ takes the money that was achieved through the sale, through the selling of this blanket, and half of it he uses to buy some food. And he tells this Sahabi, this poor Sahabi, take this food to your wife, she'll cook it for you, and then that way when you get home, after some time, you'll have a meal. The other half of the money he uses to buy the head of an axe. You know, the axe is two parts. There's the handle, and then there's the metal part, the actual cutting part. The blade of the axe, if you want to call it. So he buys the head of the axe with the other half of the money. And then Rasulullah ﷺ himself finds a stick or whatever can serve as the handle, and he himself puts it in. And he gives this axe, now it's the head of the axe plus the handle, it's a full axe. He gives the axe to the Sahabi and he says, go and chop firewood, and I don't want to see you in the masjid until after you have your livelihood. So this Sahabi, he went, and every day this was his job. He would chop up firewood, he'd get big bundles, come to the marketplace, sell it, and that's how he would earn his money, and that's how he lived. Rasulullah ﷺ didn't just give him zakat money. The point that we get from this is Rasulullah ﷺ placed heavy importance and emphasis on having a stable job, working for one's means. This is good income. If you're doing it for the halal, from a halal source, with the right intentions to provide for your family, to not ask for people, this is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give lots of ajr for this. So tawakkul is not to leave your job. Tawakkul is to do your job, but understand that Allah is responsible for my rizq. It's not my boss who gives me rizq. Why? And someone may ask, what's the problem if I think my boss is the one who handles my rizq? It's because if we have that belief that my boss is the one who's in control of my rizq, guess what? When the boss says, oh no, you can't go for Jumu'ah, you can't pray your salah, oh, this is Ramadan, no, you can't fast. I'm going to say, oh, rizq is in your hands, Mr. Boss, I'm going to do whatever you say. Unfortunately, this is the situation today. When the situation at the job and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's orders come into the slightest friction, it's my job, man, I can't. But subhanAllah, if a person understood, this doesn't come from the boss, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has written it for me. So I'm going to practice my religion, I'm going to follow the orders of Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of my rizq. I'll make it work at my job. Maybe I'll explain it to him, maybe I'll give him some examples, maybe I can show that my Islamic duties and my job requirements are not really in clash. SubhanAllah, and we'll finish with this. One brother, he came to us a while back, and he was telling us like a story, a recent experience that happened with him when he had his final interview at his job. He was, usually they have a series of interviews, and the last one you meet with the team just to have see if you fit in with the culture and all that. So his soon-to-be boss calls him into his office and he says, you've seen the company, you've seen the team, you know what kind of work we do, we like you like us. Do you have any questions or requests before we officially sign the job letter or the offer? He tells him that this employee is talking to the boss. He says, I want to pray every single day in the office, so I require